Thank you guys so much for joining me for another episode of Keeping It Real with America's Supermom. It's been a while since I've been on here, but just a little background. My internet was out. Okay, so it was not working, couldn't get on. So, luck has it. That's just how it is with technology. But I'm so excited to be here today because I have my friend Shara here. We have gotten to be pretty close through Clubhouse. So she's also on LinkedIn. We connected there as well, but we really have cultivated a great relationship through Clubhouse with insights and just life hacks and the ability to be transparent about our stories. So I'm really, really excited to have her here today so that we can include you guys in the conversation. But before we get started, I want to give her the opportunity to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see everyone. My name is Shara. I am a licensed clinical social worker, former psychotherapist, now turned wellness coach for social workers. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. So we actually got connected on Clubhouse. So
Mhm.
tell everybody, what your thoughts are about the platform because we have so much like we've got Green Room and Clubhouse and
Um,
Facebook has this thing and all these other things going on. What are your thoughts about the app?
but I love Clubhouse. Clubhouse literally has changed the game to me in terms of instantly connecting with people, especially during a pandemic.
Mhm.
When I started, it was January. My mentor Shawnee had said, "Hey, you got to get on this Clubhouse." I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't need another social media thing, majig, to figure out." So, but I got on there, and it birthed. It literally birthed my business of what I do now. I don't know if I would have got there as quick as I did if I didn't get on Clubhouse and start opening my mouth to tell my story. Yeah.
I love that. Now, and I've seen you have definitely been more active on doing video.
Hmm.
I see you almost every day, I think, because I go on and check, it's like you keep an eye on people to see what they're doing.
Uh-huh.
So, talk to us about that journey because so many people have such valuable content.
Hmm.
And it's like, you make it seem so natural. It's not like you have the same topic of what you discuss. So, talk to us about how that journey transpired.
Oh, so it's well, if it was the video, I did start out there about a year ago.
Hmm.
Shawnee Murray, who is my mentor on LinkedIn, this lady at the time she followed like over 1 million followers now on LinkedIn. When I found her, well, she found me. She had like 800,000. This was like last fall, and she was like,
Hmm.
"Shara, you're sitting on 30,000 connections. What are you doing with this?" I was like, "Nothing. I was already posting about three times a day. I was active on LinkedIn for about 3 years prior to meeting her, with just text posts, but no one ever saw my face.
Mm.
She said, "You need to get on. People need to see you. If they don't see you, they don't trust you." I'm like, "I'm not trying to sell anything. What do I got to be on video for?" She's like, "You need to do this for 90 days." I was like, I don't have time for that. I'm not Oprah. What does she think? But but aside all the negative beliefs that I had at the time, the next day I was doing a video. My first video was how uncomfortable I was doing.
Yes.
Yeah, I called it. I think at the time, fall into your fear and go with it. And I said, "This is my first video, y'all." And it's funny because people was like, I see her post all the time. Thank you for showing up." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I just started showing up every single day, whether I was looking crazy, had a do rag on my head, messed up shirt, Jayden my son in the back dancing. Sometimes is pull up doing whatever. Whether I was cooking, I think I deep fried the turkey last Thanksgiving on LinkedIn. I did that. I cook. People know me for cooking too all the time on there. I'm always doing something. So I just started showing more of myself, and I think people have their own apprehension about showing themselves. And for
Hmm.
me, I became very unapologetic to showing myself, not all made up. I think I've only been on there twice with makeup and the whole thing when I was going out, but I've always showed up organically as myself because that was my whole thing of being a mental health provider. Even before that, of doing video was I want people to be able to relate to me as a person, not all the accolades I have on my pretty page And it's funny because the more I showed more of myself, the more I talked about my story, where I came from, I was organically going towards a journey that I had no idea I was going. People
Mhm.
literally watched me grow through and talk about all of my mental health, being depressed, the pandemic, losing my job, being on food stamps. And I talked about that in real time. I was like, look, I don't know what you guys are seeing on our page, but I'm broke. I'm in a negative. And I talked about that. So many people reached back out and said, hey, Shara, thank you for sharing that. Someone like you is actually in the trenches. I was like, yeah, I was doing very bad last year. And to turn around and for people to see the journey that I made from being broke, negative food stamps, state assistance, to going to having a full successful business that landed at Business Insider about a month ago, and being able to now get out of where I was and making money, but also doing something I'm really passionate about. That was birthed out of that struggle, out of
That's
that story.
yeah. And I love that. I think it was just really the opportunity for people to relate to you and the vulnerability about, looking for something better down the road, but not knowing how you're going to get there.
Oh,
So,
Lord, yes, yes,
you
yes,
know,
yes. And I let people see that. I didn't
mhm.
care. I'm like, LinkedIn, it's a professional platform, but I'm like, people want to know real. I don't care what type of business you have. If you can try to sell something all they want, but if they don't trust you, they're not going to connect to you. So it's funny now. I have about 40,000 people, and it's growing. I don't have to sell anything to them. They're like, hey, do you have a book or something coming out? If I say I have to work on this project, they want to know about it because I've built that relationship with them over time, and I'm always in the feed. Sometimes once a day, twice a day, sometimes before I go to bed. Uh,
Mhm.
people that are on the other side of the world that I'm connected to, that when I'm going to sleep, they're just getting up. But that
Mhm.
community, I think, is so powerful. The willingness to show up as you are. Now, some people are like, how can you just show up? I do.
I love that because I think, when you just feel like you're just being you, there's so many things that you could show up and do.
Hmm.
You know, it's not until we just like, we compartmentalize so much. It's like, oh, well, this is business. My personal life is separate, and it can be daunting to try to figure out something to come up with when you have that type of mentality because, you just kind of you pigeonhole yourself
Oh
when
yeah.
you have that type of mindset.
Mm-mm. Yeah,
Mhm.
that was kind of the process I went through. I went from being a burnt out mom, angry at the I was
Mhm.
working force at the time that I got active on LinkedIn, and my first post was sharing my military story. That was my first one, and people responded to that. I was like, I don't have a business. I'm not, I just want to reach people. And I started doing little articles here and there, and then start sharing mental health. As a mental health provider, people look at us as having all the answers. A lot of us come into it because of it, right? So
Mhm.
I wanted to break that ceiling and the stigma behind mental health providers have stuff too. And I was willing to share that. I'm like, hey, I have ADHD, I have extensive trauma, I have all these things going on, and I'm willing to share it. And if you don't like it, you can scroll past. That's fine. It's somebody needs to hear it, and somebody needs to know that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, I love that. Now, so I love the whole thing about mental health. That's just one of my things, being such an advocate for talking about how important it is for your mental wellness. So, uh, share with us how you were able to have the courage to talk about being down and out with your experience, for the audience and doing that on video. I mean, people are already afraid to get on video, let alone telling their personal story in such a, you know, one that really is humbling. So, how did you get to that point to really feel that strength to do that?
Um, I grew up in a family where, oh, cutie's distracting me. I grew up in I'll
You
show you.
see me, look, I'm like a deer in headlights, girl. I can keep it moving. It's
I
like noise in the background. People are like, is it okay over there? I'm thinking, what's going on?
you
I
do.
hear that noise in the background. I'm like, oh, girl. You know,
I heard. I'm like, I be hearing on Clubhouse. She got 1,000 things going on. I'm like, I would have been distracted. But nonetheless, I would say my courage had to come from my own upbringing. I grew up in a household where I was seen and not heard. I
Mm,
kind of got my voice stifled pretty early on, and I stayed that way for a long time. It took me, I mean, I'm young, I'm 35, so it took me a long time to get into a space that knowing that my voice was of value. When
mm,
I started sharing my story and getting comfortable with my own voice, I just didn't shut up. I couldn't shut up. And I think I mean, the most raw thing I think I've ever said was, um, talking about forgiveness. I always bring this up, and I think I may have said this in Clubhouse. I talked about how I talked to my ex husband's mistress who had a baby during marriage for about 5 hours. We laughed, we giggled, and talked all that. And someone like, "What you did? What?" And said this on LinkedIn. It's like, usually I would scroll past this type of stuff, but you said it in such a way that anybody can relate to forgiveness, anybody can relate to toxicity in the heart, anybody can relate to holding on to baggage and being, sabotaging your present. And those are
mhm.
things that I like to do with storytelling on LinkedIn or any platform is sharing the story, but making sure that people can attach meaning to it and make it
Mhm,
more general, which is why
mhm.
I guess I've been good at doing that on LinkedIn and Instagram is being able to pull common threads from a story, sometimes embarrassing, whatever, but I've been comfortable at this point. I don't care. But whatever is going to help somebody. And people will say,
Right.
hey, I'm glad you shared that because I'm going through X, Y, and Z too. I mean, just the stories that I would share on LinkedIn was where I started. People really opened up and said, hey, I'm struggling. And during a pandemic where you
Mhm.
know, things are going around and people's anxiety and mental health is behind this pretty little profile, that their life is shattered. And I was in the pits. And I tell people, I'm in the pits, y'all. I'm in the negative. And I wanted to, and to tell you the truth, American Supermom, I wanted to pull that one post down. That's probably the one post I was like, ooh, I should have said that. But I left it there. And when I did, um, I'm glad I did because it allowed people to see that, I was struggling and it's kind of a load off my chest. I put it out there and didn't care. I was like, you know what? People need to hear this. Here you go. And the amount of support I got back from that was,
I don't know about I'm sorry, my daughter's in the background. Now, I don't know about cut off, but I think he's saying he wants it trimmed on the side or something.
That's it. You're gonna have to tell it like that for school, bro.
If you talk to daddy, call him and ask him because I don't know.
Like, text me the code because I don't know.
Okay.
What is it?
I think it's 1707.
Okay.
I think. Okay.
that's the older.
I'm sorry about that. Look, I would have just ignored her. She was like, are you on live? Because I need to ask you something.
No, look, this is what we do. Luckily, my son didn't come through here. He's been in his room with his PlayStation. Thank you, Jesus. So
Oh, yeah.
I was like, "That's that. Go ahead, Jayden, go play." He's like, "Bye, mommy. I'm going to go play."
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, yeah, the authenticity takes on a different role for me now. Of course, there's a barrier. Like I still have my privacy and everything, but I love sharing stories that matter and that are going to help people open up. I did that a lot as a therapist. I used to
Mm-hmm.
be for it a lot, but I didn't care if it was going to help the person make those steps to heal.
Yeah. So I would say, for somebody who is watching and they are, maybe they don't want to get on video, but
Hmm.
they want to just get to that point to where they want to start opening up, to start that journey of, getting out of the pit, so to speak, or where they're at.
I
What
could say,
advice would you give them?
gosh, if you can't get on a video, think about what first. What is your why?
Hmm.
Why are you doing what you're doing? That would be the first place I would start. I had my why was starting out saying, "Hey, I'm a mental health therapist that wants to break stigma." That was where I was in it 3 years ago. It's that why has changed over time now, but starting out with something that I was passionate about, that I would be willing to talk about, that I could slowly interweave pieces of myself, a little bit at a time. The more I did it, the more consistent I was, the more I could share. You have to be willing to let people see you. I tell people there's really no way around, people not seeing you. They need to see you to trust you. And I honestly believe that now compared to someone telling me that a year ago. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. But you got to jump.
Yeah.
You have to, but you got to know why you're doing it. Because if not, you're going to get lost and you'll stop.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think it is just, you get more freedom the more you do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of like feeling like you're in handcuffs before, but once you do it, it's like, woo, hey, what else can I tell? That's kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
My husband and kids are like, Mommy, do we really need to tell everybody? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's so great now. I do it every day. You do it so naturally. I was like, on my first video. So, yeah, it's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get and more comfortable you get. And then you have to, okay, what else can I do to reach more people? And that's kind of where I'm at now. Anything is fair game. And
Yeah.
my soon-be husband, he's like, I think people only seen him twice when he proposed to me, which I actually shared on LinkedIn in December, and him in the car, and he like waved the camera, but that's mercy. I don't want no piece of this. I'm saying no.
It is so true. Yeah. And I mean, my kids, this is the thing. They will take a selfie. They will go out here and do a photo shoot for Instagram. But the minute I want them to go live or something, it's like, I'm not getting on camera. So I really get that. But so, you talked about forgiveness. And I think this is really key because so many people spend so much time angry or upset, or it affects their future because of something that happened in the past that they just can't forgive and let go. So to have a conversation with the mistress for 5 hours, there definitely has to be some kind of insight that you can share with people about forgiveness, because I'm just saying.
It's some wine, but I can't tell lie. I had some Moscato after that. But nonetheless, it was I was a year out of my divorce when she got to me on Facebook. Facebook is the devil, it still is. And she messaged me, I'll never forget. She said, "Hey, I just want my daughter to meet her other siblings." I said, "What?" So I said, "Hey, let's have a conversation." We got on phone to find out that the reason my husband pushed for a divorce so fast because he got somebody else pregnant. Lord knows whoever else he got pregnant on base, but that's what happened. I was like, I got on there. We had some laughs. We talked everything I went through, all the hell. It made sense. What didn't make sense was how come I didn't let go sooner. But when I did, I had already moved on, and it was more like an affirmation that Shara did what you needed to do to let go of that mess. Let it be somebody else's mess. I gave her. I never forget. I said, he's not going to take care of your kid. Here's his social security number. Here's his direct deposit. Here's his bank. Here's all his information and social. Here you go. Do what you got to do. Get your child support. He was pissed, but as I'm being, and he's going to be a chapter in my book. I actually have a chapter called Facebook Pictures. So, but dedicated to him, my lovely ex-husband. But yeah, I mean, he gave me a good story. I look back and I laugh, but there were some parts where I was just like, Jesus, what was I thinking? I was, where I was, and I've learned that you can't go back and change the past. What you can do is turn it into a pretty book and sell it. Dang, somebody else needs to hear. That's how I look at it now.
I love that because that is so true, and I think that's the part that makes it somewhat hard for people to tell their story because they see where they might have had lapses in judgment or they were blinded by whatever. And, in some places, it's kind of hard to separate from that, because you feel like if I see this, somebody else is going to see it. What are they going to say? And you get back into that judgment. But like you said, that's the past. It's happened. It's over. There's nothing you can do about it, but we just kind of have this thing of feeling like we have to hide it as if it's going to make it go away or something.
And it's funny because I used to beat myself up about it, and that in another relationship I was in for about 6 years before him, it really taught me that I had some of my own stuff to deal with. A lot of them had to do with daddy issues and the military, because both of them were military men. But it really, those relationships really allowed me to look at what I needed to do to value myself, as
Mhm.
well as the type of relationships I wanted to be in. My now soon to be husband, he's the opposite of both of them. He's a man that loves me, and I had to allow that, coming from a family where it was abuse everywhere.
Mhm.
So I'm just very, very happy that of where I am, and I'm happy for all the mess, because something
Mhm.
beautiful came out of it. This pretty little boy that I love, and if I wouldn't have met my crazy ex-husband, I wouldn't have had him. But I know it takes people a while to get to that point of appreciating their journey, and that's
Mhm.
okay. I feel like, it's par for the course if you go through that shoulda, coulda, woulda. We all do it, but at what point do you let it go? At what point do you,
Mhm.
okay, come out of that? What am I going to do with this? What lessons have I learned from it? What golden nuggets that I am done with this mess? Let me give it to someone else that can learn from it.
Mm. That's so good. I mean, and so courageous and everything else. So, my next question is, we talk about these previous relationships and being really invested in them, so much so where it really, it did something to change you.
Yeah.
So, how did you go to trusting people again? Because that just seems like that would be such a hard place to be in.
Ooh, yeah, that's that's another book. But yeah, it really, gosh, trust was a is it was a big thing for me, especially in the relationship I am in now. I've known this man for 20 years. He's known me about the same, and even with him, he had to fight with my ghosts.
Mhm,
He had to fight with both of them, my ex fiance and my ex husband, and
mhm,
so it crept in a
mhm,
lot, and he would challenge it, and I would be like, well, this happened to me, blah blah blah. So you got to deal with this, and oh, I don't know how many men would actually do that. Some would be like,
mhm.
I'm out, but he held the space for me in a way that most people would have walked away. When I was angry, when I used him as an emotional punching bag, he stayed.
Yeah.
Helping take care of a baby that wasn't his. So
Mhm,
okay, so it was one of those things that he's definitely earned where I'm at now. For them, she's happy. Look at her. He knew that I would come out of that, but he knew I needed a place to just deal with it. But
mhm,
it took me a while to even learn how to trust again. There were
mhm,
definitely times where I still had to battle those ghosts. I went to therapy for those ghosts. But I feel like if you can't trust people, I trust people until they give me a reason not to. I think
mhm.
that's my motto now. Until you give me a reason not to trust you, I give you my trust blindly. But if you violate it, you know,
Yeah. Well,
that's
and I think that that's a great wisdom. And I think, along with that trust sometimes is even being able to trust ourselves.
oh God, yes,
You
yes.
know?
Ain't that isn't that that's an ain't that isn't that the hardest part? Uh,
Yes.
that I really when I tell whenever I tell my story of the being dragged through the dirt with both of those relationships, that took up a lot of my young adult life from 19 and up until now. Um, it wasn't so much them; it was me being mad at me,
Mhm,
and and then not trusting my intuition and going against it.
mhm,
And then I'm questioning everything that I'm doing because I don't have that relationship with myself, that strong foundation of
mhm,
trusting that it's okay, to make mistakes, even with people. It's going to happen. And
mhm.
not everybody is meant to stay. Sometimes they're just there to just teach you a lesson and be on your way. But again, it takes, I think, going through those things to do that. I have a young sister right now. She's in the same psychopathology mess that I went through. And I can't, all I can do is watch. As I can say, my sister is like, hey, train coming, train wreck. This girl learns by hitting her head. She just gotta go roll. And I'm just there to hold. I'm like, hey, we over. Let's bandage you up. Let's do this again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I look at it as. With trust, it's something I can give. once it's broken, it's not something I easily, give again.
Mhm.
So I've learned that. But I can't have meaningful relationships without trusting others. I
Mhm.
don't think any of us can.
No, yeah, absolutely not.
It's
And I
some
love that.
bargaining chip, like, hey, I'll trust you if you do, and it shouldn't work that way.
Right. So true. And I mean, I love the fact that you bring that up about a sibling and, the experience because, that's one of the things about being able to share your story. Not everybody is going to get it at certain times, and we still have to share our story because I always joke and I go places and I talk about certain issues with parenting or time management, boundaries, or whatever. And I say, well, I wish this had been around when I was younger to help me. But then I remember, you know what? It probably was. I just wasn't listening. Right. It's like, I don't need that because that doesn't apply to me. And I don't understand what she's talking about. But as you get older and look back, it's like they were probably trying to tell me that. And I was just so far into my own issues that I didn't even hear what they were saying.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that happens sometimes with our story. I mean, you can look at as your kids develop. It's like, now I'm telling you, this is not the way to go, but they're just like, you're old or you don't understand. These times are different. And then it's like, whatever you said comes to pass. And then they
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
you know,
my mom's TV, and she like, see, you see it now, don't you? I was like, yeah.
mhm.
So,
So true. So I love that. And I think it's just being able to hold space for people for however they have to get through their own issue.
oh
So
yeah,
whether it's them just talking to you but creating a boundary with that. Because it used to be that I would tell somebody something and then if they went and did the opposite, I would just be so upset. I'm like, I told them not to do that. But we have to give people the space to make their own choices.
yes, yes. With being the oldest of five, I had to learn that 4 other times. So let them,
Yes.
yeah.
Hmm. So this is good. So you now talk to us about how before the video, you said you had like 30,000
30,000 connections.
people. Now, what was it for somebody who wants to build up their LinkedIn?
Then,
And just, what were some tips that you could share to
um,
help them, in addition to video?
so additional video, I would start out with engaging with the network you already have.
Hmm.
Start posting, but also engage and support other people posts. It takes a lot to even, encourage to put out original content. So I always encourage people, you want to at least take, the earlier part of your day, if you can, maybe 20, 30 minutes, start engaging with other people's posts because you're in thoughtful comments, not just that's awesome. you know, you got thoughtful comments, and the more you comment on people's posts, the more other people in their network will see you, and it just grows. But you got
Hmm.
to be willing to support others first. Give to get, give value up front. Don't look for anything in return, but in that you actually gain value
Hmm.
because then your network grows. So that's the one first thing I would say is 30,000 connections it took work, but I became kind of obsessed with LinkedIn. I was like on there, I think in the morning, then I would be on there again later in the evening on my way home on my commute. Commenting on people's posts, I'm posting, also engaging. I've learned some tricks like big influencers that are on there. I learned that, hey, I'm not trying to get Oprah, but who's these people that are following her? I would make thoughtful comments, and then hey, they would say, "Who's this person?" I'm going to reach out to them, and it's like a ripple effect. But you got to be willing to engage, support, and be consistent. Consistency, and that's hard. Consistency, being consistent can be really hard. And people ask me every day, "How do you be consistent?" It's been over a year now. You've been 2, 3 videos on your feed. I say, you know what? Sometimes there are times when I just like, oh, I don't feel like doing this. But seriously, I don't feel like doing this. But what makes me do it? Remembering why I do it in the first place.
Yeah.
And then when I don't post, I do get harassed by a couple people in Africa or a couple other people. I say, hey, you didn't post today. What's going on? You love it.
So true.
Yeah. So for me, I would just say be consistent. Know why you're engaging. What's the end game? What do you want to gain from LinkedIn? What are you trying to do with it? If it's you're building a business, you have a business. If you have a business, then you need to work on branding. You need to work on getting your story out there. A lot of times I'm working with people and they are like, I have a business already, but I'm not getting any hits. People don't know you. People don't trust you. You got to show up. And that's hard for a lot of business people. Like you talked earlier about the compartmentalizing piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they separate the two. I was like, your business and your personal life actually, are they really,
Right.
Are they really disconnected?
And that's really the thing that makes it challenging because, you just can't separate yourself like that. You have to realize that that's a part of life. It's nothing like, like today I was doing an Instagram live with somebody and we had scheduled it, but then my daughter had open house and it was a long line. So I'm thinking I would have been home by now. And I'm out trying to get a good signal, but that just happens. Now if I was one to say, oh my goodness, I can't be on this thing at the school or whatever, it really cripples you because life happens in real time and you have to be able to navigate through that. So if you have all these barriers to entry about each little area, you're never going to be able to get a lot done, and it's for stress.
Yeah, it's stressful. I won't know because I'm like whatever, but for most people I know it can be difficult, but I think it really comes down to how do you show up in the world? How are you willing to show up in a way that's going to benefit someone else, not yourself, but for someone else? And I guess for me, when I get tired, I'm like, if I want to post, I post. And I don't plan any of my posts. Some people do the planning. Like I have my business where during the licensure where you'll see the professional posts for my business, but a lot of people know me for the personal branding piece way before I started that.
Right.
So whatever is on my mind, I'm like, look, this happened. I'm going to talk about it, and I talk about it. I just can't show up scripted on video. It has to come from me.
I totally get that. I'm the same way, and I think that's so important because that's another way that you do things like you. It doesn't have to be this formula because if you listen to some social media managers, they'll tell you that. Have it planned out, know what you're doing this day and that day. I just know that I need to post something. That's enough for me.
Wherever I'm at, I post, and people really appreciate that. But of course, there's some people that can't do it when they have to have something. I was one of those people, believe it or not. Like said, be a color-coded coloring book of planners, and now throw kids in the mix, and he pretty much threw it out the window. But I've learned to be more adaptable and flexible because of that. So, as well as I do, motherhood has its special talents.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I didn't know I was an octopus, that I could be doing 8 different things at the same time. Didn't know, girl. Didn't know. So, but this has just been a great conversation. I really appreciate your transparency because I know many business entrepreneurs, it's like having one of those ingredients missing when it comes to insight and business insights that you can use to move forward in your business. We just have that one piece that's missing, and that's the element of really being truthful behind the scenes of what it really takes to have the type of success that we choose to have.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I guess for me, my business was birthed out of a lot of my own struggle, and I guess for me, I'm willing to walk both lines, being a professional, but being someone that's a businesswoman now. So I can kind of, I can walk both the lines, but I always have to reference back to my own willingness to be vulnerable and be authentic to that. Because if I can't do that, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. So
love that. Yeah. So tell everybody the best way to get a hold of you.
The best way to get a hold of me is you can find me on LinkedIn all the time. I live on Instagram as well. I just started doing reels, American Supermom. I forgot to tell you that.
Awesome.
Um,
Girl, I'm doing my part, okay? My daughter has challenged me to do reels every day. I'm like, what have I got myself into? But you know, when your kids want to be bothered with you, you do what you got to do, right?
yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, yeah, and Clubhouse.
Awesome. Well, we just want to thank you so much for coming on again. And for all you out there watching, feel free to reach out to Shara. She's very personable, easy to talk to, and have a conversation. If you're struggling with anything when it comes to mental health, feel free to watch out. If you just need some insights, some recipes, okay? She's even been doing cooking stuff. So reach out to her and have that conversation so that you can move forward and be a better version of yourself. You know, one of the things that you'll notice in this conversation is that she's happy where she's at. She's already been through her struggle, and now she's willing to share her insight to help others avoid the same issues that she experienced. So feel free to watch out. If you have any questions, put them in the comments and we will make sure that we will get those to her. But in the meantime, we want to thank you all for watching us and hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Bye, everybody.